They thought she'd stay quiet, sign the deal, and smile through the insults. They were wrong. They say the biggest deals happen behind closed doors, not in boardrooms, not over conference calls, but over fire pits at mountain retreats, on yachts, over wine. That's where the handshakes that really matter take place. Simone knew this. She'd played the game long enough to stop pretending it wasn't true. So when the invitation arrived, hand-delivered thick embossed card, no email in sight, she wasn't surprised. The Hollister Summit, hosted by the Whitmores, one of the most influential families in America. Old money, older values, real estate, defense, aerospace, banking, they touched everything. And now, apparently, logistics. Simone had built Kira Tech Dynamics from scratch, from a converted garage in Oakland to a national powerhouse. Her AI-powered shipping infrastructure was the future, and everyone knew it. The Whitmores wanted in. A $900 million partnership deal was on the table. Everything seemed aligned, except one thing. The invite read, "Please join us for a private weekend of strategic discussions and relationship building at our family estate in Big Sky, Montana. Dress casual, leave formalities at the door." Simone raised an eyebrow. Big Sky? She had nothing against Montana. But this wasn't her terrain. She moved differently, talked differently, built differently. Still, she accepted, because she didn't get this far by being afraid of uncomfortable rooms. Her assistant, Keisha, looked uneasy as they packed. "You sure about this?" she asked, folding a navy sweater into Simone's weekender bag. "Something about these family-hosted summits feels off. They want your brain, but they expect you to laugh at their jokes." Simone gave a slight smile. "They're getting the deal, not me." She arrived in Big Sky on a Thursday afternoon. The Whitmore estate was a sprawling mountain compound with security tighter than Fort Knox. Black SUVs, private airstrip, ranch hands, helicopters in the distance. A young man in a Patagonia fleece greeted her at the gates. "Miss Caldwell, welcome. We're thrilled to have you." "It's Simone," she replied, extending her hand. He hesitated, then grinned. "Right, Simone. I'm Grayson. I'll get your bags. The family's just finishing up lunch on the deck." She followed him through manicured paths, past luxury cabins, tennis courts, a custom-built whiskey distillery. This wasn't just wealth. This was legacy. Simone took it all in silently. When she finally approached the main lodge, she spotted them. A dozen people in casual designer wear, laughing over sparkling water and charcuterie. The Whitmore clan. It was like walking into a country club catalog shoot. Richard Whitmore Sr., silver-haired and still broad-shouldered at 74, was seated at the head of the table. Next to him, his son and Simone's main contact, Bradley Whitmore. Early 40s, smug in the way only people born into billions can be. And surrounding them, spouses, cousins, consultants. As Simone stepped onto the deck, conversation slowed. Not stopped, just paused. She'd felt that pause before. Bradley stood up quickly and waved. "Simone, you made it. We were just talking about the future of rail freight automation. Come, join us." Simone smiled and walked over, hand outstretched. "Thank you. Beautiful property." Richard Sr. stood next, slower, and gave her a quick once-over. "So you're the woman everyone's buzzing about," he said, eyebrows raised. "Quite the reputation you have." "Hopefully a good one," Simone replied evenly. "Oh, of course. We just weren't expecting—" He stopped short. "Well, come sit. There's wine." No one moved to pull out a chair, so she did it herself. The conversation resumed, and though her presence was tolerated, it was clear this wasn't her table. Not really. But that didn't bother Simone. She didn't come to be liked. She came to make history. But as the day wore on, it became clear she'd have to navigate more than business to get there. Simone thought she'd experienced every kind of passive-aggressive behavior corporate life had to offer. She was wrong. That first evening, the Whitmores hosted a welcome cocktail hour in the glass-walled lounge overlooking the mountains. It was casual on the surface, cheese boards, string quartet in the background, fireplace lit. But the undercurrent was unmistakable. A social vetting disguised as hospitality. Every conversation felt like a test. "So, where'd you actually grow up?" asked Dina Whitmore Baines, Richard Sr.'s daughter, swirling her wine. "East Oakland," Simone answered without blinking. Dina tilted her head, amused. "And now you're out here negotiating nearly $1 billion deal with us. That's incredible." The emphasis on us wasn't lost on Simone. She offered a calm smile. "Hard work travels." Across the room, Bradley had cornered her assistant, Keisha, who had joined Simone to support the retreat logistics. "So, what's your boss like in real life?" he asked, clearly assuming Keisha was a personal aide. "Tough? Type A? I bet she's got a military dad or something, right?" Keisha blinked. "She's standing 5 feet away. You could just ask her." Bradley chuckled like she was being playful. "Yeah, but she's all business right now. Wanted the inside scoop." Simone caught it. She caught everything. Later, as the group migrated to the billiards room, one of the cousins, a guy in his late 30s named Trent, leaned against the pool table and said, "I was shocked when Bradley said the CEO of Kiratech was you. Honestly, I pictured someone different." Simone tilted her head. "Different how?" He gave an awkward laugh. "You know, maybe older, maybe a guy. Definitely not someone who could pull off heels in a balance sheet." Simone laughed softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I get that a lot, usually right before someone tries to lowball me." And for a moment, the room got quiet again, just like on the deck. Later that night, back in her guest suite, Keisha knocked on the door, already in sweats. "You good?" she asked. Simone was brushing out her hair in front of the mirror. "I'm fine." "They're being slick. You caught all that, right?" "I caught it. All of it." "Want to leave? We can fake a stomach flu. Private jet out before sunrise." Simone smiled at that. Tempting, but no. If I back out now, they win. They think I care more about being liked than being respected. I can't give them that. Keisha sat down on the couch. "You really think they'll sign the deal?" Simone turned, expressions still unreadable. "They need the deal, but I want to see how far they're willing to go pretending they don't." The next morning brought skeet shooting and ATV rides through the hills. Simone opted out and used the time to take investor calls from the guest office, an oak-paneled den with books arranged more for aesthetics than reading. By mid-afternoon, she returned to the lodge. The others were already back, muddy boots scattered across the foyer, laughter echoing from the kitchen. As she walked through, a woman with a clipboard, one of the estate staff, dressed in a gray uniform, hurried over. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said breathlessly. "Are you one of the new caterers?" Simone stared at her. "No, I'm not." The woman flushed. Oh, I didn't mean..." Simone cut her off, gently but firmly. "You assumed. It's fine, happens all the time." She walked past, slowly, every step echoing louder than the one before. Back in her room, Simone sat on the edge of the bed and stared out at the trees. Montana was beautiful, but the beauty didn't matter right now. Respect wasn't in the air. It was something she'd have to take. But she had no idea just how far the Whitmores would go to test her patience before she finally reached her breaking point. The next evening was supposed to be light. Just a small dinner by the fire, they said. Something intimate. A chance to relax before tomorrow's big strategy presentation. Simone dressed simple but sharp. Black slacks, a tailored camel blouse, low-heeled boots. She walked into the lodge's west dining room, where a long wooden table had been set with linen napkins and antique candle holders. There were only 9 seats, not the full group from before. Richard Sr., Bradley, and a few others were already sipping drinks. But before Simone could reach her seat, a voice stopped her. "Excuse me, can you refresh the wine on that end? And we're out of ice." Simone turned slowly. It was Meredith Whitmore, Richard's wife. She was holding a crystal glass and not even looking at her. "Ma'am?" Simone said flatly. That made Meredith look up. Her expression froze for half a second. Oh my goodness, She waved a hand. "I thought you were staff." Simone didn't blink. "I'm not." "I see that now," Meredith said, adjusting her blouse. "My mistake." The room got a little quieter. Bradley tried to smooth it over, laughing awkwardly. "Mom, Simone's the reason we might still have a freight division in 5 years." But the sting had already landed. Simone walked to her seat without another word. During dinner, no one mentioned it, not directly. The conversation tiptoed around AI automation, shipping routes, climate tech synergy. But beneath the surface, Simone could feel the tension, like a string pulled just tight enough to hum. She answered their questions, challenged their assumptions, and when Bradley misquoted one of her public patents, she corrected him, with citations. The food was excellent, but she barely touched it. At one point, Dina leaned over and said in a half-whisper, "I can't imagine how exhausting it must be, being in rooms where you're always underestimated." Simone gave a tired smile. It's not exhausting, it's just familiar. After dessert, Richard Sr. raised his glass. To Simone, he said, for tolerating this oddball family of ours. You've got steel in your spine. That's rare. She raised hers back but didn't sip. I built something I believe in, she said, and when I see that belief questioned, not by market data, but by tone, by posture, I take note. A few family members shifted in their chairs. Bradley leaned forward. Simone, no one here is questioning what you've built. We just have our own way of doing things. Culture, tradition, you know? Simone nodded. I know. But she didn't say what she was really thinking, because it would have flipped that table over. After dinner, Simone stepped outside alone, into the freezing air. Keisha found her 10 minutes later, arms crossed tight in her hoodie. They mistook you for staff. Again, she said, voice flat. Simone didn't answer. Keisha took a breath. You said they needed the deal. They do. So why are they acting like they don't? Because they don't want to need me. They want to absorb me. Quietly, neatly, without bending a single rule in their house. You're still going through with the pitch tomorrow? Simone looked out at the trees, their edges blurring in the dark. Yeah, she said, because what I say tomorrow will tell them who they're really dealing with. But even Simone didn't expect just how ugly it would get before sunrise. By the time Friday evening rolled around, Simone had rehearsed her pitch 4 times. She knew every slide, every number, every potential objection. But it wasn't the presentation that had her on edge. It was the dinner that came before it. The final night of the retreat, the so-called family dinner in the main lodge dining hall. Not casual this time, formal attire, candle-lit, long oak table, assigned seating. Keisha wasn't invited. She's staff, right? Meredith had asked Bradley. She's on Simone's executive team, he'd replied, mildly annoyed. But the decision stood. Simone walked into the hall dressed in a deep emerald green wrap dress, hair pinned high. She looked composed, focused, but she felt like she was stepping into a lion's den wearing heels instead of armor. The table had place cards written in calligraphy. Hers was between Trent and Dina. Bradley was across. Richard Sr. at the head. Dinner began with a toast. Richard stood, glass in hand. To progress, he said with a practiced smile, and partnerships that make the impossible possible. Simone clinked glasses but didn't drink. The meal started light. Cold crab salad, then pheasant with wild rice. Dina leaned over and whispered, I'm impressed with how you've handled this week. It's not always easy being the only woman in the room. Simone gave a small nod. I'm rarely just the only woman. Trent chuckled from the other side. But come on, Simone. You gotta admit, it's a little funny. You walking into this dynasty like a disruptor. Makes us all look like dinosaurs. I didn't walk in to look like anything, she replied. I walked in to bring value. Bradley jumped in. That's exactly why we're excited. This deal, it's more than numbers. It's symbolic. Us evolving. Simone looked around the table. Then let's just hope symbolism doesn't get in the way of substance. A quiet pause. Salad plates were cleared. Wine was refilled. That's when Richard Sr. decided to speak. I'll tell you what I don't get, he said, swirling his scotch like it was part of the punchline. This whole obsession with representation and leadership, what happened to hiring the best person for the job? A few heads turned toward him. Dad, Bradley muttered, now's not the time. No, Richard went on. I'm just saying, it used to be about merit. Now it's quotas, diversity hires, boxes to check. Boardrooms are starting to look like marketing campaigns. He looked at Simone. No offense. She sat still. Everyone waited. Simone folded her napkin slowly and placed it on the table. None taken, she said, because when people say that, no offense, what they really mean is they're hoping you'll swallow the insult and keep the peace. Richard leaned back, unfazed. I'm just speaking truth. Simone looked him in the eye. Then here's some truth for you. I didn't build Kiratech because I was part of someone's inclusion initiative. I built it because no one else could solve the problem I did. My company isn't a box you check. It's the reason your aging logistics empire might survive another decade. The table went silent. Even the waiter froze mid-step. Dina whispered, well, this got tense. Simone stood up slowly, hands calm at her sides. I've been called articulate, aggressive, impressive, intimidating, sometimes all in the same sentence. But rarely have I sat at a table this expensive and heard someone so proud of being wrong. Trent opened his mouth, then shut it. Bradley looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. Richard Sr. raised his glass again. You got fight. I'll give you that. Simone didn't move. I have something more important than fight. He smirked. What's that? Options. She didn't sit back down. She left the room with quiet steps, walking past the private chef, the vintage wines, the hunting trophies on the wall. Back in her suite, she locked the door and stared at the documents spread across her desk. The deal, the proposal, the press draft. Keisha called. I heard, she said. Simone exhaled. They really think I need this deal. Keisha's voice was steady. You don't. I know. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't imagine, is that tomorrow the deal wouldn't just fall apart. It would implode. Morning came with skies like steel and wind that cut through the trees, but inside the estate, it was all quiet luxury. Espresso machines hissing, fires crackling, staff moving quickly but silently. Simone was up before anyone. She'd slept maybe 3 hours, but her mind was clear. She walked into the executive lounge at 8 o'clock a.m. sharp, portfolio under her arm, documents ready, a USB drive in her coat pocket. This was supposed to be the final meeting, the presentation, the handshake, the beginning of a $900 million partnership that could change the industry. Bradley arrived first, all smiles. Simone, let's pretend last night never happened, yeah? He said, pouring himself black coffee. No pretending necessary, she replied. Let's just get to business. He nodded, relieved. Others trickled in. Dina, Trent, 2 legal advisors, and finally Richard Sr., wearing the same pressed khakis and a Patagonia vest like he was heading out to shoot pheasant instead of finalize a mega deal. Simone stood in front of the room, backed by the fireplace, her slides queued up on the screen. She started strong. Kiratech is not just future-proofing the shipping industry, she said, clicking through diagrams. We're creating a neural network of predictive logistics that reacts faster than human supply chains ever could. Data flashed behind her. Graphs, real-time maps, predictive curves. They watched, listened, took notes. Then she paused. I'd now like to walk through the integration timeline, assuming we still see this partnership as viable. She looked up. Silence. Then Richard Sr. leaned back, hands behind his head. Impressive, he said. I mean, it's a bit much, all these smart charts and AI jargon, but you've clearly done your homework. Simone said nothing. Bradley jumped in. What my father means is... Richard cut him off. No, I'll say it plain. You're very impressive, Simone, especially coming from, well, where you come from. She blinked slowly. And listen, he continued, I get that companies like yours need a little edge, a little story. You know, woman-led, minority founder, all that. You gotta play the game. He chuckled. It's like marketing with melanin. Works like a charm these days. That's when the air left the room. Everyone froze. Simone looked directly at him. You said what? I said it's a smart move. Don't get me wrong. I admire the hustle. Bradley shifted uncomfortably. Dad, you're way out of line. Richard laughed again like it was harmless, like he was playing devil's advocate in some college debate. But Simone didn't flinch. She took the USB from her pocket, walked over to the table, and placed it gently in front of Bradley. What's this? He asked. My final offer. Bradley opened it and flipped through. He stopped. You removed the equity share? Simone nodded. And the revenue split? He looked up, confused. There's nothing left. There's my offer, she repeated. Richard scoffed. So you're just walking after all this? Simone folded her hands calmly. I walked into this house with an open mind. You fed me wine and insults, mistook me for a caterer, talked about me like I wasn't in the room, told me my accomplishments were a marketing ploy. Richard shrugged. So you're going to let your ego get in the way of $900 million? She leaned in slightly. No, I'm going to let my standards get in the way of giving you access to what I built. The room was silent again. Simone turned, walked to the door, paused. You think you still hold all the power, she said without turning back. But the world's changed. You just haven't caught up. But while Simone was already letting go, the Whitmores had only just begun to understand what they'd lost. By lunchtime, the entire estate felt like it was holding its breath. Simone had packed light. A single suitcase, half zipped, sat beside her bed. She wasn't rushing, but she wasn't lingering either. Keisha knocked gently on her door just after noon. "They're panicking downstairs," she said, stepping inside. Simone didn't look up from her phone. "They should be. I heard Bradley on a call with legal. They didn't think you'd walk." Simone finally looked up. "Because women like me don't usually get to." Keisha nodded slowly. "Not in rooms like this." They stood in silence for a moment. It wasn't pride that filled the air. It wasn't vengeance either. It was something heavier, a kind of stillness that came after choosing yourself in a room that made its living off of pretending you didn't matter. A knock at the door broke it. It was Bradley. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, avoiding Keisha's eyes. Simone stepped into the hall. She didn't invite him in. Bradley looked exhausted, the kind of tired that comes from realizing you might have just watched a future vanish because you didn't know how to act in the present. "Look," he began, "I know my dad was out of line. I tried to stop him." Simone kept her face still. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he said. "You've got something real. We can smooth this over, rewrite the press strategy, tell the story right." "Rewrite what, Bradley?" she asked. "That I was humiliated but stayed for the check?" He hesitated. "It's not about staying. It's about being smart." Simone stepped closer. "No, being smart is knowing that tying my legacy to a name that casually disrespects me in front of a room full of witnesses would cost me more than 900 million. It would cost me every person watching who thought maybe, just maybe, dignity still meant something at the top." Bradley rubbed his jaw, frustrated. "You're really not going to budge?" "I'm already gone." She walked back inside and closed the door behind her. Downstairs, Richard Sr. was pacing. "I told you," he said to Trent. "You give them too much rope. They think they're in charge." Trent didn't respond. Dina, sitting near the fireplace, finally spoke. "Or maybe she just didn't need us as much as we thought." Richard waved a hand. "We'll find another partner." Dina looked directly at him. "Not one like her." Keisha and Simone left the estate by mid-afternoon. No formal goodbye, just a quiet exit, down the winding drive lined with pine trees and paid silence. As the private jet climbed into the Montana sky, Simone exhaled for the first time in hours. Keisha leaned back in her seat, arms crossed. "What now?" Simone looked out the window. "Now," she said, "now we tell our story, and we do it our way." But as the plane disappeared into the clouds, the headlines were already being written, and the Whitmores were about to learn that walking away quietly doesn't mean walking away weak. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Kiratech CEO walks away from $900 deal after disrespect at private summit. Simone Jules makes bold exit from partnership with Whitmore conglomerate. Tech founder stands her ground, and the industry takes note. Simone hadn't even released a statement yet, but she didn't need to. Someone on the inside, likely one of the junior advisors, leaked details to a reporter in San Diego, and the story spread like wildfire. The comments were relentless. "This woman just did what 10 corporate DEI teams couldn't." "This is why we don't just want seats at the table. We want to build our own table." $900 million, and she still said no. That's power. The Whitmores were caught flat-footed. Bradley tried to do damage control, offering vague quotes to business outlets about strategic realignments and differences in company culture. But it only made things worse, because people wanted answers, and the silence from Simone only added fuel. When she finally agreed to do a single interview, it wasn't with a major network. It was with a Black-owned business podcast based in Baltimore. She didn't dress up for it, no makeup crew, just her voice, and a kitchen table. "I didn't walk away from the deal," she said calmly. "I walked away from disrespect." She paused. People confuse silence with weakness, but silence can also be a choice, a boundary, a refusal to entertain things that should have never been said in the first place. The host leaned in. "And what would you say to the young girl watching this, who thinks she has to tolerate those things to succeed?" Simone didn't hesitate. I'd tell her, you don't climb a ladder to the top just to sit next to people who laugh at you behind closed doors. You climb to change who builds the ladder. A week later, Kira Tech announced a strategic alliance with a coalition of minority-owned manufacturing and shipping companies based in Arizona and Oregon. Smaller players, but innovative and fast-growing. No legacy name, but all mutual respect. And not only did the market respond positively, investors loved it. Shares jumped 14% in 3 days. Simone didn't celebrate publicly. She just got back to work. Back in Oakland, she walked through her HQ one afternoon, watching her team huddle over timelines, prototypes, and prototypes of shipping drones. Real people, real ideas, not legacy wealth, just legacy being built. Keisha caught up with her by the conference room. You good? Simone smiled slightly. I'm better than good. Some of the execs want to know if you'll speak at the summit next quarter. Keynote slot's yours if you want it. Simone paused. Tell them I'll think about it. You're not still worried about how you looked walking away, are you? Simone turned. No, I'm thinking about how many people never realized they could. She walked away, phone in hand, eyes forward. Some deals are worth more than money. Some exits are louder than press releases. Simone didn't walk away because she lost. She walked away because she won something bigger, her self-respect. And in doing so, she gave permission to every young leader watching her to do the same. If you're in a space where your value is questioned, where you're tolerated but not respected, ask yourself, is the check worth the cost? Because sometimes the boldest move you can make is walking away.